Hi guys, are you ready? Things are about to get real here. I've had so much going on in my mind in the last week or so. It's been keeping me up. It's been waking me up. I've been having very, very vivid dreams and this real sense of I really need to tell my truth. And the reason why I'm calling this video I've been silenced is because all my life I have been repressing, suppressing aspects of myself, adapting myself, trying to fit in, trying to work out what it is that humans are doing that I'm not getting right. And this has been a lifelong struggle for me of not being understood. And when I have tried to explain it to people, it hasn't fared well for me. It started when I was very young at school, and I was picked on, I was bullied, I was humiliated and ridiculed constantly because of my otherness, that I didn't understand what it was. And because we had traveled so much as a child, my family, we just traveled to a lot of different countries and different places. I kind of just assumed that my otherness was because I was from somewhere else all the time. Everywhere I went, I was always from somewhere else. And now I think that has become something that I feel more comfortable with, and it's probably a large part of why I roam, because if you are from somewhere else, you don't necessarily feel that sense of otherness that comes from something so much deeper. I'm going to get emotional talking about this. This is like, there's going to be a whole flood of stuff that's going to come out, and it might not all happen in one video. But last night it was, I had a day yesterday where I've been really pushing myself, and I've been going out busking, and I've been working this job, and that involves a lot of peopling, talking to people, and even though it's only 2 hours a day, it's a lot for me, to the point where when I come back to my caravan, I pretty much shut down. I found an old video on my phone from back in 2019 when this all started, and it was me sitting by a lake in Oregon telling the story about why I couldn't go on with my business and how ill I was at the time. And it really kind of made this whole journey sort of feel, I don't know, it had a beginning and an end feeling to it. Not necessarily an end, but I understood more what it was all about. And there was this feeling of, I just wish I could just tell people how I really feel. I wish I could tell people what life really is like for me, and not risk that being criticized, ridiculed, or pathologized. So this is a coming out video in a way. And who have I been silenced by? Ultimately myself, because I did write a book about my experiences 20 years ago now. I can't believe it's been 20 years since the book came out. And I used it in a context of what had been ascribed to me as a diagnosis at the time, which was bipolar disorder. But I read the book again recently and realized that everything that I'd been describing was actually what I've since been diagnosed with, apart from complex PTSD and obviously generalized anxiety disorder and depression and things like that. I have been in the mental health roundabout since I was about 15 years old, when I first started expressing some severe problems in school, like shutting down. I would completely shut down in school to the point where I didn't communicate. I kind of disassociated, I guess you'd call it. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but I got referred to the school counselor, and apparently I did it quite a lot during our sessions. I'm never aware, and therapists have told me since, and even my daughter pointed it out once, said, "Mum, do you realize you do that?" No, I'm not aware I'm doing it when I do it, but I do have moments where it's almost like a circuit breaker in my brain. I don't feel it coming. I don't know it's going to happen, but it just shuts me down completely. And it's usually because I'm dealing with some feelings of, I want to say what I want to say, but my past experience of saying what I want to say has been really hard for me, along with various misdiagnoses and the even now it's hard for me to talk about this. I was medicated for most of my adult life on various psychological mood altering type drugs. They would try all different kinds of ones on me. Obviously I was diagnosed with bipolar when I was 19. I was living in LA, going to college at the time. I was studying literature and just doing an arts degree. It was actually a pre-law arts degree. I wanted to do law. I was really interested in policy and government and how things work, and influencing the way policies were made was my ultimate goal. But the initial part of diving into literature and just having this feeling of my brain just being this like opened up, because I got so into, you know, all the classics and Shakespeare, and I just saw so much magic in the words, and I was able to make these sort of connections and correlations where when I got assigned an essay subject from the lecturer, I would sort of come up with my own ideas, like, well, what if I did this? You know, well, I've got this idea about, and I'd talk to them about it, and they'd say, well, if you can convince me of that, you go right ahead and you choose that subject. And I was literally getting A++ on my English assignments. I was also studying history and politics, and US history and politics, and just, I just found this, it was like the circuits in my brain had just opened up to a whole bunch of communication methods that resonated so much better for me than talking to people ever had. I was able to express my feelings in my journals, and I had been doing that since I was even younger, 12, 13, 14, 15. I mean, I have boxes of journals where I've written and written and written and written and written everything. And the reason I did that was because I had nobody to talk to about it. I was ostracized at school. I was an outcast at school. I did not have friends. I did not, you know, I mean, intermittently I'd have friends with some of the weird kids, but they usually got really grumpy and frustrated with me at times, and I never understood why, and that still happens to me as an adult. So I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and then I knew all that time that I was writing a book. And I've been thinking lately, you know, I need to write another book. But then there was this part of me of like, do you have to put anything of yourself out there at all? Because the other voices that have silenced me have been people I've been really close to, like, who think that everything I've done to date, whether it was through the magazine, whether it was through this YouTube channel, whether it was from when I used to be a music reviewer and reporter, and either way, I seem to have drawn attention to myself in a way that other people find that I don't even know what the word is. Like I'm an attention seeker. Like I enjoy that, like it's coming from a place of ego or something. And when I try to explain that in actual fact, no, the real me just actually wants to hide a heck of a lot. And for me to actually put myself out there, like even busking, like to do that, like there's a certain game face that has to go on. And there's a lot of, anxiety around that, to the point where the times when I have been criticized for being too loud or playing too often by shopkeepers, or moved on by security, or those moments and those places, that really, really, really affects me badly. So when I find a place where I can play and they're receptive and appreciative, I will probably go back to that place over and over again. I don't think anyone understands how hard it is for me to put myself out there at all. And I found myself questioning myself. Why do I do YouTube? Why do I feel the need to record my life? Why do I care if anybody else can relate? And it comes back to, well, why did you write? Why did you photograph and video and record every moment of your life, that ever since you were capable of doing that? What was that about? And does it really matter? Because somebody else is probably saying everything that you're saying. It doesn't have to be you. But it does have to be me. And that's the message I keep getting. Is I have to say what I have to say. It's important. Don't get me wrong, I'm a happy person. I'm not depressed. These aren't tears of sadness. These are just tears of overwhelmness. The thing that got me diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and has since been diagnosed, I got told that I was on the autism spectrum disorder in my 50s. That was interesting. I'd been talking to a therapist, a psychologist, for quite a while, and describing some of the things that I was struggling with, and they suggested it as a possibility to me. At the time, I was in remote Victoria, and there was nothing really I could do about it, and I didn't really know what autism even meant, and I didn't really take it seriously, I guess, at first. But then I did start watching other videos and seeing other people, especially late diagnosed women who, like me, had often been misdiagnosed, because in the era that we were first exhibiting problems, it wasn't really a common diagnosis in functioning girls, and I guess back in the day, maybe I would have been diagnosed with Asperger's, highly functioning, intelligent. Now they don't talk about functioning, or they don't use the word Asperger's. It's just a spectrum, and it's either you have high needs or low needs. And I guess because I survive and have survived, I'd be considered low support needs. But the more I learnt, the more I realized that I'd been struggling my whole life made so much more sense, and there were things that I could do, and I could be a little bit kinder to myself about why certain situations were a struggle for me. Eating in restaurants, all that noise. There's no filter. And I now wear little sound reducing loops experience earplugs when I'm in a setting like that, or if I go to a concert or a festival or a live music event where I just want to hear the music, or I just want to hear the person I'm talking to who's sitting next to me. These loops experience earplugs block out all the extraneous noise. I can't handle windy environments, probably for the same reason. It's really a lot, so I'll often wear them if I'm just walking around and it's windy. I've learnt now that there's a reason why I don't like shopping centres and why my meltdowns used to occur in shopping centres. My poor children, when they were little, I don't think they ever understood. Mum would just suddenly be on a heap on the ground crying because I didn't know why. They certainly didn't know why. I do feel quite a lot of sadness and grief for the fact that maybe if I'd known, maybe if somebody had picked it up, and the psychiatrist who ended up putting me through the whole assessment process, she was really shocked. She said, "I can't believe, Lisa, that in all your years and all the psychologists and psychiatrists and therapists, because this has been a lifetime of trying to work out what is wrong with me and why, and all the various diagnoses and the various medications and the CBT, hospitalizations in psych wards, multiple, not pleasant experiences, traumatizing, being carted away in ambulances sometimes, having my children taken away from me by my ex-husband because of my mental illness." Anyway, I don't want you to feel sorry for me because you can't change things that are in the past, and I've just tried to really work on being as good a human being as I can and to try and adapt as best I can to the difficulties I face. I love music. I feel everything energetically. So when I'm in a room, I'm feeling the energy of the people around me. I can't necessarily oftentimes discern that's coming from that person and that's coming from that person, but I will feel a whole bunch of feelings, and sometimes they're not very pleasant. Sometimes they're really pleasant. That's why festivals and music things are great for me, because everybody's in a good energy and it makes me feel so good. But I also can perceive things that people don't believe are real, and that telling those stories is what got me diagnosed as bipolar, because I was describing instances of having communicated with, I guess you'd call it the spiritual realm. I have had multiple experiences very frequently of being able to tune into things that people were feeling or going through, people that are close to me, obviously not everybody, thank goodness, but people that I'm very connected to. And any of my ex-partners will attest to my uncanny ability to know exactly what happened and when, or predict that something will happen and when. You know, I can use so many examples, but just to, give you a few. I mean, it used to happen a lot when I was a child. I used to find myself wanting to go and just sit in a nature spot, like I had a spot under a tree I'd go and sit at, and I've always been a bit of a loner. At school, I'd sit on the brick wall on the perimeters of the school and sit there and just be in my space. And I've had multiple experiences of saying to somebody, "Hey, this has happened," and they'll be like, "No, it hasn't happened. What are you talking about?" And then a couple of days later it happens. And my sister once said to me, how do you do that? And I used to say, magic, it's magic. Because I didn't know how to describe it. And that Police song, Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic, was like my little theme song, because I just described it as magic. I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't know how I could see things and understand things that other people didn't seem to see or get. One time I came walking down the stairs singing a song, just a random song, and my boyfriend at the time, father of my children actually, and he was downstairs and watching a television show, used to be called Rage. I don't know if they still have it. Rage used to play a lot of sort of Triple J music that we were kind of into, and about 2 or 3 songs later, that song, which was a completely random song, I have no idea why it popped into my head, it came on, and he kind of looked at me like, what the heck? And I'm like, I don't know where that stuff comes from. I can sense what people are thinking, and definitely what they're feeling, sometimes better than I can sense it in myself. And that's not normal, apparently. So they tried to medicate me out of that because they said it was a symptom of mania. But I had none of the other classic symptoms of mania at all. And being able to have conversations with Carl Jung and Samuel Hahnemann, and I've even tried to sometimes suggest these things on comments on other videos, like this is what's happened to me, and people say, oh, you're just crazy. So I've been called crazy most of my life. And when I tell people I'm a weirdo, and they're, oh, you're not weird, there's nothing wrong with you. So that's the cognitive dissonance that happens, because you've got a combination of people telling you that you're crazy and that that's not normal, and other people saying, oh, everybody feels that way, or that's, you know, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm like, okay, if everybody feels like this and there's nothing wrong with me, then why is life so difficult to navigate? And why do I do things so differently from other people that they find it kind of either fascinating or just strange? Anyway, I silenced myself because this book was published in 2006. Not meaning to blow my own trumpet, but I read it again and I'm like, that's actually a really good book. And people who did read it said it was a really good book. And I had people emailing me from all over the world at the time wanting to talk to me about this book and how much it had affected them, and that was pretty special. But then some things changed. I was getting some pretty strong messages. I don't even know how to describe, I guess intuition is probably, no, they're literally messages about where I should go and where I needed to be, and visions of, like, interesting visions about what was required of not just me but humanity as a whole, and things like this were happening. It caused me to move to Mullaney, because the message literally was, you need to get to the higher ground. And I was living in Kangaroo Point at the time, right on the riverfront there. And I'd been coming to Mullaney, to Crystal Waters, just to get out of the city and enjoy the countryside, because nature has always been my healing, soothing place. It's where I feel at home. And eventually, you know, I'd made connections here. I could have different deep and meaningful conversations with people, and it just was like, you need to move to the higher ground. And when friends in Brisbane asked me, why did you move to Mullaney, I said, because the big water's coming and I need to move to higher ground. And yeah, I think it was a year or so later, not even, that the huge floods came to, I think, was it 2010? I think I must have moved to Mullaney. I feel it was around, maybe it was 2009, 2010. Anyway, 2011, the whole of Queensland flooded terribly, including the Brisbane waterfront, very badly. And I watched all the water run down the hill. Honestly, I feel like you're going to judge me just by saying some of the things. There are so many examples of this. The other thing that happened when I was in America, and I was going to be put on disability. My finances were terrible. I was on food stamps. The business was not functioning anymore for various reasons, but I won't go into it. I think I've spoken about it in my previous business channel, and probably social media. The advent of social media affected a print magazine quite significantly, as you can imagine. That was my dream job. I loved my job, but it was all crumbling, and it got to the point where I couldn't afford my rent and things were looking bad, and I realized I was probably going to end up back in a caravan, or a trailer as we call them in America. And I was adapting my brain to that possibility when I got a really, really, really strong message that I needed to get back to Australia. I needed to be where my children were, because something big was going to happen and the borders were going to close down, and I wouldn't be able to get back to Australia even if I wanted to, if I didn't leave right then. So I left America in 2019 and came back to Australia. And I mean, even I thought that was a crazy message. I'm like, what do you mean borders are going to shut down? Like, that's never going to happen, you know? Like, it seemed crazy. And I really tried to resist it. I actually came back to Australia on a return ticket for a holiday just to see my kids. And I went to the airport the day I was supposed to fly out, and I just had this really, really strong feeling in my body. It was not going to let me leave. I was sitting there sobbing, like, I don't know what's going on, but I can't leave. So I left the airport, went back to the little Airbnb that I was staying in near the airport, and I spoke to my psychologist, like, what is going on, you know? And I spoke to my friends in America, you know, everything's fine, come back, come back. So I rebooked the ticket, I changed the ticket, I rebooked my return ticket, and it happened again, the second time. I couldn't leave. I was really not in a good headspace at that time. I was really struggling. My health was really bad. My kids were not particularly sympathetic or understanding, and I was really, really questioning everything. Why do I want to be somewhere where I don't particularly feel wanted or appreciated? But unbeknownst to me, the borders were about to shut, and I wouldn't have been able to come back even if I'd wanted to, and it went on for a couple of years. So I listen to those voices now, and sometimes when I don't, I end up in situations that I probably should have listened to, the intuition. How it comes is a sense of energy, so the conversations I've had with the people that aren't around, I've had angels from the time I was 7 years old. I think I was about 7 or maybe 8 when I experienced the first angelic encounter. I called her Donna. I don't know if that was actually her name, but when I drew pictures of her and wrote poems about her and told stories about her to people during my childhood, Donna was the name that I used. I don't know why she was called Donna, but obviously, you know, made me a very firm believer. She was sitting at the end of my bed. She was wearing a long flowing dress. She had long hair. She was almost like a glowing, iridescent white, opaque type figure that woke me up in the night. Just the sense of a presence, and at first terrified me to the point where I hid under my blankets because I was like, I don't want to see this. And then I sort of peeped over and I went, hello? And she turned and she looked at me like straight at me, and then she just vanished. And yeah, my mum told me, I told her the next day, she said that was your guardian angel. So I've always believed in angels and guardian angels, and I talk to them, and I there's not just one, there's been a few. I've had a few others come through. I've been in a situation where I've had when I was down the Gold Coast only, a couple of years ago, recently, where I had a massage from a lady, and she said, are you open to some energetic communication? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And an archangel, I can't remember which one, but anyway, he came through, and I'd been really grappling with some stuff at that time. I really didn't know, should I head north, should I head south? I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of really at a crossroads feeling in my life, and I was asking the questions, and that's the key. I ask the questions, and I ask out there, and when I ask a big question, I get answers. And the message I got that she channeled through was exactly spot on, exactly where my head was at, exactly what I needed to hear, and exactly was proven the whole way down the trip that I did end up undertaking, on the basis that the celestial guides had my back 100%, and no matter what was going to happen and transpire, that they wanted me to trust that the process was going to unfold as it should, and everything would be okay. Having said that, I still have my doubts quite a lot. I will question it, just like, maybe you're just crazy, maybe you're just crazy. So yeah, anyway, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent. I do that. When I started that magazine, and that involved very much a persona of being miscongeniality all the time. You couldn't have people hate you, think you were weird, criticize you, put you down. It's like being a politician when you run a face-fronting business, where I was off to events every weekend and setting up a stall and selling subscriptions and magazines and talking to people and taking photos and interviews and gathering content for the magazine. The makeup, the dress, everything that went with that, the whole image of that, was all very much part of it. And I knew straight away, given that this business was taking off the way it did, it just took off like a rocket from the day that I started it. It kind of blew me and everybody away. That the book would need to disappear, because there are things in that book, so gut-wrenchingly raw truths of the first sort of 30, I think, how old was I when I'm 55, my wife's 30, actually I just had a birthday, I'm 56 now. So yeah, there was 35 years of my life in absolutely unfiltered, unedited, unadulterated rawness. And there are aspects of that had people in the conservative sphere that I was marketing myself into, the certain demographic of people. And anyway, in any business, let's be square, if it was any business at all, that would have come back and bit me on the butt. There would have been people making judgments on me, as I had experienced all my life to date. I've been judged and had people whisper things behind my back, and friends talk about me behind my back. I've had friends cross the road, former friends, see me walking down the street, having, you know, found out some detail of my life that they made a judgment against, crossing the road to walk down the other side. You've seen in my videos here, even in the last few years, I've had friends that I was close to, that everything was great, that we told each other we loved each other, and for reasons completely unbeknownst to me, like I haven't said or revealed too much. I'm very good now at trying to keep it all inside, that they just change their mind about me because of some perception that they have of either something I've said or done or not said and done, which is usually, if I delve into it and finally find out, is completely false. But I respect their right to dismiss me. I don't want to force anyone who doesn't willingly appreciate or want me around to have to put up with me. That's a horrible feeling. I don't try to impose myself on people. And so yeah, the book vanished, and it was really hard work, actually. It was hard to get all reference to it off the internet away. It was like to shut down a whole thing. I had a website. It all went, and I managed to make it absolutely vanish, to where there's only, you know, apart from the copies that probably are out there that, you know, people have bought, I have the last 2 remaining copies of the actual book. And I've often thought, gosh, I wish I could put it out there again. I wish I could put out there and add to it about what happened since then. Maybe a second book, maybe rewrite this book in the context of, actually, all this time it was autism. I'm autistic. What does that even mean? I mean, people have called me a highly sensitive person, HSP, that's a thing. Oh, INFJ. There's all these little labels that you can tag into if you want to. I have been on the, you know, the Myers-Briggs test, whatever it is, which I think is something that was initially developed by Jung, or at least used by Jung as personality types. I am an INFJ. Apparently that's really rare. And so INFJs will often, you know, make videos or have things online and blogs and things about what being an INFJ means, and we're this like unique group of people. Or, you know, even when I have rheumatoid arthritis, you know, there's all these things that we can identify with and say, oh, I'm like this because of that, I'm like this because of that, I'm like this because of that. And I've really kind of resisted that because I don't like being categorized and I don't like being labeled. And so I've tended to say to people, I'm more likely to describe, oh, I'm sorry, I'm, you know, having trouble focusing on our conversation right now. I have trouble when there's lots of other background noise around me, you know, like maybe if we can go and sit outside and talk somewhere together, that would be better for me. You know, like I'd rather tell you what I'm struggling with at the time that's affecting the interaction that we're having than say, oh, I'm autistic. And, you know, most people wouldn't have a clue what that meant. I didn't have a clue what that meant. I don't know what autistic means. I don't know what it does. But I am finding out that it is quite common for this telepathic type communication that can happen, which is why usually other autistic people click straight away with other autistic people, because the way we communicate is very different. And I guess the big question I've been asking in the last week of myself, and I kind of alluded to in my last video, is why am I doing YouTube, and do I really need to, and should I, and do I want to contribute to that social media machine that I really am a bit suspicious of, and algorithms and AI and all that kind of stuff, that the way the direction it's going makes me a little bit nervous, because I'm, you know, anything that takes us further away from nature and our natural state and our natural way of living, I've never been comfortable with. Yeah, that just made me think of something funny. Like, I've always had this thing when I was writing and working, I'd have to tell everybody, you know, including my own family, to please leave the house. They'd be like, well, we'll go downstairs, or we'll be in the other room, we'll be watching telly. No, I can't have your energy anywhere around me for me to focus. If I can feel your energy even in the sphere around me while I'm trying to work, it doesn't work. And I started thinking, is this something I really want to do? Is this something I really want to do? And this thought came into my head of, you know, one of those things I've said to myself and other people so many times: what would you do if you weren't afraid? Lisa, what would you do if you weren't afraid? You'd tell your story. You'd tell your truth. You wouldn't worry about who's going to object to that, what your family thinks, what some random nasty troll might think when they say horrible things like you're just crazy or whatever. You know, I don't have very thick skin. I'm not very, I am very, very, very sensitive to criticism, which you would be if you endured it as much and as often as I have. And not, you know, and somehow maintain a sense of self-esteem, and amongst all that, it is an ongoing battle for me. But if I could keep it real with you guys and let you know, as I've sort of tried to do with this channel, is keep it real. You've seen my ups, you've seen my downs, you've seen my wanderings, you've seen my still times. You've seen some of my philosophy of life when it comes to things like the homeless crisis and my views on what's being done to address that or what's not being done to address that. I've got plenty more to talk about that as well. Philosophy in general, and the direction that the world is heading in, and what I have felt and thought about that for a long time. I mean, I have been saying and writing, and it's in this book, so I'm so glad I have that. And most of the book has come from the journals that I had written. I have that as printed, published evidence that I've been saying things about things going back to the 80s that people are only just starting to talk about and accept on a either a scientific or a philosophical or psychological level recently, like it's brand new news. People are saying, oh, there's this, you know, now they believe that blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, I've been saying this for a long time. Nobody was listening to me, but then maybe nobody was listening to me because I didn't know who to tell, because I'm not good at conversation, and so YouTube for me, it's kind of like my writing now. The things that I was writing were just thoughts that I was thinking. Conversation is difficult because the back and forthness part of it will make me lose my train of thought. And also I'm very consciously aware of I don't want to hog a conversation. I've been told that I have to give space for the other person, and I have to ask the right kind of questions and be, you know, and I am genuinely interested in other people's stories, don't get me wrong. I can stop and listen, and I have many times, especially, you know, in that recent getaway trip. I heard so many interesting women's stories, and it made me really feel differently about my situation in a lot of ways that I was going through at that time. But being able to just, the way I did when I wrote, this is the stuff that I need to express. This is the stuff I want to say. I can't keep a lid on this forever, and I can't keep filtering my own expression and my own impressions, meaning not just what I express outwardly, but what I receive inwardly. I can't keep putting a lid on that. And it was interesting because last night I just happened to be listening to a podcast, and somebody who's very, very scientifically, Greg Braden, I think his name is. Anyway, look into him. He's got it. He knows the stuff I'm talking about. He's on it. Very, very knowledgeable in terms of quantum physics and things like that. But he started talking about, and it was so strange. It didn't seem to fit in with any of the other stuff, but it was this: if you have these creative, expressive urges, then it was almost like a plea. Please express it. We need to. And it reminded me of a vision that I had many, many years ago when I first moved to Mullaney. And I had this vision of everyone, all these people were gathered around the ridges of the hilltops, because this is Mullaney's on top of a hill, and all these people were gathered around, and everyone was dressed like they were going to a party, and I was part of this. I was there, and I'm walking, and we're all walking like from all directions in the ridges. We're all walking downwards from the ridges to the center, which there is a lake there now, but it wasn't a lake in my vision. I only recognized it when I eventually saw this place, because I think it was prior to me actually moving to Mullaney that I'd had this strange vision, and it was all part of this coming to the higher ground message. And everyone was holding in their hands like a box, a sort of like presents, boxes with bows on them, and they were gifts. And I knew straight away in my mind what that was. It was like all the people were coming together, and they were all holding in their hands their gift, like their personal gift, their specialty that they had to offer to humanity as a whole. And I knew right then that that's what we need to do. There are some people, and I think I did write about this in the book, there are some people who are quite happy to work a 9-to-5 in an office environment and commute to work an hour and back every day. And I don't know many people. I personally don't know anyone that's happy with that type of lifestyle, but let's just assume, because there are plenty of people doing it, that there are some people who are content enough to follow that path. That's their gift, because we need those people to keep everything running properly, right? But some people are not suited to that, and I never was. And most of the people that I relate to never were either. As much as I tried to fit, this round peg into that very square hole, it never worked for me. And we all have some innate gift or skill or talent or ability, or just something that resonates in our heart and makes us feel at home. And whether that's music or painting or writing or poetry or craft work or nurturing or connecting with children or animals or planting gardens, and there's so many things, I could go on and on forever and ever and ever. But if we can tap into what our personal gift is and share that with the world, then that's something that we should do. And I had always felt, since I was very young, that my gift was writing, because people told me, my lecturers at university always told me that my ability to express myself in the written word was phenomenal. And then when I wrote reviews and things like that for music thing, people would say, "Oh my God, I read your article and it was so good. It made me feel like I was really there." And that would make me really happy, because it was like, well, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And I didn't really think it was a skill, because I didn't understand why nobody could just write like that. Like, I'm like, I could just write and write and write and write. And then when, you know, when the magazine ended and I wasn't writing as much, I still do journal quite a bit. And, you know, poetry. I'd been writing poetry forever and ever and ever. I guess what changed was getting video cameras on our phones, you know. I just started to sort of want to express myself through a visual verbal medium as well. And I don't know if that's my gift or talent or skill, but I do really appreciate it when people say, I have had people say to me that listening to me express myself in a certain way on a certain day made them feel less alone, and that they can relate to it. And if it weren't for YouTube, I'd probably be still sitting here feeling like I'm the only weirdo on the planet that feels the way I do about most things. So I try to explain that to my daughter. It's like, it's kind of like helping me find my tribe, you know. And I think that connection is really, really, really important. And isolation, as much as I seek it out and need it for recuperation and regeneration and recharging of batteries to enable me to do actual peopling with real people in a face-to-face and energetic setting, you still need to connect. We still need to connect some way or another. I tell you, I love living in a Faraday cage. It's brilliant. If you suffer from energetic overload and overwhelm and electromagnetic onslaught, as well as there are so many forms of energy we haven't measured yet. I've always known that, and I did write about this in the book. Just because we have a machine to measure this type of wave and that type of wave and this type of wave, which even 100 or 200 years ago we didn't have, doesn't mean there aren't countless other types of energies out there constantly interacting. And I'm probably more sensitive to those than the average person perceives, maybe. But aluminium, you know, tinfoil hat people. Yeah, I'm one of those. I deliberately live in an aluminium can because I noticed just by chance, not knowing why, but years ago, that I slept so much better whenever I slept in a caravan. My caravan at the time was aluminium and aluminum, as you say in America. And I slept way better. And then when I got a different one made of fiberglass, I didn't sleep as well in it, and finding out that, you know, it was actually shielding me from a lot of certain types of energy waves. And it's probably why I just find it very peaceful and relaxing hanging out in here. And if I'm not hanging out in here, like yesterday when I was feeling really disconnected, I just had a couple of days of like, I feel really disconnected, and I didn't know why. It was quite discombobulating. That's a word I use quite often, and people always kind of like look at me funny when I use it, because I guess they don't hear it very often. They go, oh, discombobulating, that's an interesting word, or that's not a word you hear very often. And I say, I use it a lot because I feel it a lot. Discombobulation is a pretty common state for me, and I've been feeling particularly discombobulated for a couple of days, and I wasn't really sure why or what that was about. And a part of I kept saying to people that I saw that I knew, like, can you give me a hug? I'm feeling really disconnected. Can we swap numbers? Can I contact you sometime? I'm feeling really disconnected. But yet coming back here feeling peopled out, you know, and actually not really wanting to call someone and hang out. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to get connected again if you don't want to go and hang out with someone? And So yesterday, after I did all my laundry, I went down to the river, and it was flowing quite rapidly because it had been raining quite a lot. So I didn't swim because I probably would have ended up and washed down to the ocean. It was flowing. But I found a little shallow kind of pool part where it was rocky, to the point where I was able to sort of lie off to the side of the flow in the shallow water of the river, with the water just flowing over my body, and I just lay there and I guess meditated in a way. I don't really consciously meditate, but I tried to still my mind of the thoughts and just focus on being at one with the water and the trees and the rocks, and absorb energy. Because I was like, oh gosh, you haven't been doing your morning sun grounding thing that you were doing all the time when you were in Brisbane and when I was out off grid on the bush. You know, that's probably why you're feeling disconnected. It's not that you're disconnected from other humans, you're disconnected from Mother Nature's energy that is essential for your well-being. So yesterday I did that, and I lay there and I closed my eyes, a lot of it, and I could just feel that energy coming through those gorgeous rocks. I mean, there's nothing like mountaintop rocks to give you a whopping great burst of goodness. And the water flowing reminded me to just, make like water. Just go with the flow. Don't resist the flow. And then at one point, the sun was streaming onto my face, and I was getting my vitamin D and my grounding and my water, and it was all happening, and I was feeling this sort of almost blissful feeling of at oneness with everything. And I opened my eyes, and above me, there were the trees kind of over the river, there were these two butterflies, and they were doing this kind of magical little dance around each other like this. One butterfly was black with white dots on its wings, and the other butterfly was white with black dots, like yin-yang butterflies. I don't know if they're from the same species. I have no idea what kind of butterfly would make maybe a male and a female in totally different colors. I have no idea, but these guys seem to like each other a lot. They were just dancing around. Sometimes they'd land a little bit on a branch and they'd sort of flutter, and then they'd go and do their little dance. I watched them for a good 10 minutes, and I just thought, this is where you need to be. You are exactly where you need to be right now. And it is okay to be you. So I'm going to be terrified putting this one up. I'm always scared putting the deep ones up, but here goes, guys. It is okay to be me. It is okay to be you. And I'm thankful for you all.